Here's the question nobody puts in the retirement brochures. Not the home price, not the tax rate, it's this. Who will actually know your name there? Because the research on retirement keeps landing on the same quiet finding. The hardest part usually isn't money. It's the silence after the moving truck leaves. So this video is built on one idea. There are small towns in America that are structurally bad at leaving you alone. Towns with a music jam every week, a festival the whole population works on, a college that hands you a calendar, a square where showing up is the whole invitation. 20 of them. Every home price pulled fresh from Zillow this week, every hospital checked, every tradition verified as alive and running right now. We're counting all 20 down to number 1, a town of under 3,000 people where live music has filled the square nearly every week for 60 years, and where sitting alone is genuinely difficult to pull off. Let's see what we got. There's a courthouse square in Texas where the whole town still shows up, and it has a strange claim to fame. Granbury Square was the first in the state to make the National Register of Historic Places, a full ring of 1880s limestone storefronts around a clock tower courthouse. And unlike most historic squares in America, this one never went quiet. The Granbury Opera House, rebuilt inside its 1886 shell, runs professional musicals and concerts more than 200 nights a year, which means a retiree here has a Tuesday option most big cities can't match: dinner on the square, a show, and a 10-minute drive home. Zillow has the typical Granbury home at $368,000, up a hair over the past year and going pending in about 3 weeks, and the town wraps around Lake Granbury, 30 miles of Brazos River water curling through the middle of everything, with a city beach 2 blocks from the square. The kind of detail that sounds invented until you're standing on the sand looking at a courthouse. The calendar does the social heavy lifting. Farmers market Saturdays, wine walks on the square, a 4th of July that draws crowds in the 6 figures, Christmas candlelight tours through the historic homes, and free beach concerts through the summer. And the local legend industry works overtime too. The town claims connections to Davy Crockett's family and runs ghost tours past the Opera House, where, the story goes, John Wilkes Booth once acted under a false name. True or tall tale, it keeps the sidewalks busy after dark. Lake Granbury Medical Center operates right in town for the hospital line, and Fort Worth's full medical firepower sits 40 minutes northeast. The town even runs its own historic paddle wheel boat cruises off the city beach in season, and the reopened Brazos Drive-In, one of the last drive-in theaters in Texas, plays double features under the stars, the way it has since 1952. The honest entry in the ledger: this is Texas. In July, triple digits happen. The lake is the answer and everyone knows it, and the square's popularity means weekend tourists share your sidewalk. What you get for tolerating both is a town where the default answer to a free evening is somewhere to go, and where the loneliest thing in sight is the occasional empty parking spot. Some towns fight loneliness with a festival. Frankenmuth built its entire economy out of one. Michigan's Little Bavaria, founded by German missionaries in 1845, decided generations ago to lean all the way in. Timbered facades, a glockenspiel tower that plays the Pied Piper story on the hour, horse-drawn carriages, the riverboat paddling the Cass, and the result is a town of 5,000 that hosts millions of visitors a year, and a calendar that never sits down. Bavarian Festival in June, Oktoberfest in September, a World Expo of beer in spring, Zender Snowfest in January when most northern towns hibernate, ice sculptors flying in from around the world to carve blocks to sides of trucks along the main street in the dead of winter. That last one matters more than it sounds, because winter is when small-town loneliness does its worst work, and Frankenmuth looked at January and scheduled against it on purpose. Zillow has the typical home at $330,000, up 3.6% this year, and the neighborhoods behind the tourist strip are quiet, tidy Midwestern streets, where the famous chicken dinners at Zender's and the Bavarian Inn, 2 of the largest restaurants in America by meals served, function as the town's living rooms, and where Bronner's, the world's largest Christmas store, keeps a quarter mile of holiday glow burning 361 days a year. Volunteering runs deep. The festivals are staffed by locals. The booths and beer tents need hands every season. And the newcomer with free time gets absorbed fast. The Fortress Golf Course wraps the river bend for the warm months. And the covered wooden Holtzbrook Bridge crossing the Cass is the kind of landmark that ends up in every grandkid album by the second visit. The healthcare line is the honest asterisk. There's no hospital inside town. The Covenant and Ascension systems in Saginaw sit about 15 to 20 minutes up the road. Close, but a drive. And living inside a postcard means tour buses own the main street on summer Saturdays. The Trade is a town where January has a festival, strangers are the economy, and the word quiet mostly describes the side streets, never the calendar. In 1992, a slim novel about a photographer and an Iowa farm wife sold 12 million copies, and suddenly the whole world knew about the covered bridges of Madison County. Winterset is the county seat those bridges belong to, 6 of them still standing in the wooded hills around town, red planked and photogenic. And every second weekend of October, the Covered Bridge Festival pulls tens of thousands into the square for 2 days of craft booths, parades, quilt shows, and pie, a tradition running continuously since 1970. Here's what the movie crowds never learned. John Wayne was born in a 4-room house here in 1907. The Birthplace Museum, a few blocks off the square, draws Duke pilgrims from every state. And the courthouse square itself is one of Iowa's best. Limestone courthouse in the middle, working storefronts around it, the Iowa Theater's 1920s marquee relit and running first-run movies and classics again after a full restoration. The town added the Iowa Quilt Museum on the square too, which sounds small until you watch a tour bus empty into it. Cider season adds its own ritual. The local orchards press through the fall, and the bridges themselves each carry a name and story locals will happily assign you homework on. Zillow has a typical Winterset home at $297,000, essentially flat this year, and Madison County Healthcare System runs a genuinely modern hospital campus right in town, emergency room included, which for a county seat of 5,000 is quiet gold. Des Moines and its airport sit 40 minutes northeast, close enough for grandkid pickups and specialist appointments in the same trip. The counterweight is an Iowa winter. Real snow, real wind across open country, and a town that goes early to bed outside festival season. And a quick one before the covered bridges close for the night. If a town with 6 bridges, 1 Duke, and its own hospital is useful information, hit subscribe. It costs you nothing. And unlike the bridges, it doesn't even need a roof. Next, we cross into a village that decided to stay Swiss. The village trustees of New Glarus made a decision decades ago that sounds like a joke and worked like a masterstroke. If the town was founded by Swiss settlers in 1845, then the town would simply stay Swiss, permanently on purpose. Chalet architecture ordinances, flower boxes on every sill, flags of the White Cross, and a calendar imported straight from the Alps. The Heidi Festival in June, staged with a full costume cast. Volksfest on Swiss National Day in August, with Alp horns on the hillside. Oktoberfest on William Tell performed outdoors over Labor Day weekend, the way it has been every single year since 1938, which makes it one of the longest-running outdoor dramas in America. America's Little Switzerland is a village of 2,200 that behaves like a cultural embassy, and the social physics are the whole point. When your town's identity requires yodeling clubs, Alp horn players, flag throwers, costume festivals, and a cast of dozens for an annual play, a newcomer doesn't have to find community. Community is short-staffed and actively recruiting, and retirees are exactly who staffs it. There's also the small matter of the brewery. New Glarus Brewing famously sells its beer only inside Wisconsin, which turned Spotted Cow into a statewide pilgrimage and the Hilltop Brewery Gardens into the region's most cheerful gathering spot. Half the patio on any summer afternoon is gray-haired and grinning. The Swiss Historical Village Museum runs 14 buildings of settler history with volunteer docents, another standing invitation for a newcomer with stories to tell and time to tell them. Zillow has a typical home at $366,000, up 2.9% this year, and the Sugar River State Trail rolls right out of the village for 23 car-free miles of biking through dairy country. The honest lines, there's no hospital in the village itself. The Monroe Hospital campus sits about 15 minutes south, with Madison's University Medical Muscle 40 minutes north. And Wisconsin winters ask for real commitment. What you're buying is a village that scheduled its own togetherness a century in advance and enforces it with pastry. Cornish miners dug this town into the Wisconsin hills in the 1830s chasing lead, and they built what they knew from home, low stone cottages with thick walls that look airlifted from Cornwall. When the mines gave out, the cottages should have crumbled, and they nearly did, until two men bought the ruins on Shake Rag Street in the 1930s, restored them by hand, opened a restaurant serving pasties and saffron cake, and accidentally founded one of the oldest artist colonies in the Midwest. That's Pendarvis today, a state historic site, and the town around it never stopped attracting makers. Mineral Point now holds more than 20 working studios and galleries for a population of 2,500. Potters, jewelers, printmakers, blacksmiths, with gallery nights that pull the whole town onto High Street. The connection engine here has a name and a front door. Shake Rag Alley Center for the Arts runs hands-on workshops nearly year-round. Woodworking, watercolor, writing, metalsmithing, taught in historic cabins, and the student body skews noticeably silver, which means a retiree here doesn't just watch the art scene, they enroll in it, and classmates become coffee friends by week 2. The 800-seat Mineral Point Opera House, restored to its 1915 glory, runs films and live shows downtown. Twice a year, the town throws open its studios for organized art tours, spring and fall. And the Cornish Fest each September brings pasty bake-offs and Celtic music to the streets the miners built. Zillow has a typical home at $331,000, up 3.2% this year. Old stone and brick with gardens in the driftless hills that the glaciers missed. The Honest Ledger, the hospital is not in town. Upland Hills Health sits about 15 minutes away in Dodgeville, and the Wisconsin January on these hills means it. But if your picture of not being lonely involves learning to throw a pot on a Tuesday with 6 new acquaintances, this little Cornish outpost wrote the class schedule. Every June, this Kansas town of 3,700 raises a maypole, and half the population shows up in Swedish folk costume to dance around it like it's 1869 again. Lindsborg is Little Sweden, USA, founded by Swedish immigrants on the prairie, and it never let the identity fade. Dollar horses stand outside the shops and homes like a town-wide scavenger hunt. The bakery sells Swedish tea rings, and every other autumn the Svensk Hyllningsfest festival takes over for 3 days of folk dancing, smorgasbord, and craft booths that the entire town spends months preparing, a tradition since 1941. Then there's a tradition that stops people cold. Bethany College here has performed Handel's Messiah every Holy Week since 1882, one of the oldest continuous Messiah traditions in the Western Hemisphere. An entire Messiah Festival of the Arts grown around it, oratory, exhibitions, concerts, in a town smaller than most high schools. A college calendar, a festival machine, and a costume closet. That's 3 connection engines before you've unpacked. Now the numbers, because they're the sweetener. Zillow has the typical Lindsborg home at $208,000, the cheapest address on this entire countdown. And it's up 11.6% over the past year, the hottest gain on the list next to one Virginia mountain town, which tells you the secret is moving. Lindsborg Community Hospital operates right in town, a genuine rarity at this population size, with Salina's bigger medical campuses 20 minutes north. Coronado Heights, a castle-topped sandstone bluff just outside town, built by Depression-era work crews, gives the prairie its one hill, and sunset picnics up there are a local institution with a standing invitation. The honest line is the geography. This is open Kansas prairie, wind included, and the nearest real airport is Wichita, 90 minutes. In exchange, you get a town where the default social unit is the festival committee, at the lowest price anywhere on this list, $208,000, dollar horse included, in spirit. Twice a day, an Amtrak train pulls into Hermann, Missouri, and that one detail changes the entire retirement math of this German wine town, because it means you can ride to a Cardinals game or the St. Louis airport without touching your car keys, then ride home along the Missouri River. Herman was founded in 1837 by the German Settlement Society of Philadelphia, who chose this stretch of river valley because it looked like the Rhine, planted vineyards on the hillsides, and built a brick town so determinedly German that by 1900, Stonehill Winery here had grown into one of the largest wineries in the country. Prohibition killed the vines, the town replanted, and today 7 wineries ring the valley on the Herman Wine Trail, with tasting rooms that double as the town's social infrastructure. The calendar is a connection engine. Wurstfest in March for the sausage makers, Mayfest in May with maypoles and lederhosen, and then the town's masterpiece, Oktoberfest, which Herman does not celebrate for a weekend, but for every single weekend in October. 4 straight weeks of Oompa bands, bratwurst, and strangers becoming table mates in the beer gardens. Volunteering at these is practically a residency requirement, and newcomers get handed an apron fast. The Katy Trail, the longest rails to trails path in the country, runs its 240 miles right past the river landing across from town, which puts a car-free bike ride to the next wine stop on any given morning's menu. Zillow has the typical home at $240,000, up 2.6% this year. Brick storefronts and hillside Victorians, and Herman Area District Hospital operates right in town, small but real, with the bigger systems an hour east in St. Louis County. And a quick pour before we head south. Subscribing to this channel works like a Herman tasting flight. Costs almost nothing, samples everything, and nobody judges how long you linger. The honest note is the size, 2,400 people, and a Missouri summer that steams. October though, October here is a town-wide dinner party that lasts a month. Locals describe St. Francisville as 2 miles long and 2 yards wide, a rich top town strung along a bluff in the Louisiana hill country that most people don't know Louisiana has. Live oaks dripping moss over a walkable historic district of galleries, cafes, and porches that sit close enough to the sidewalk for a conversation, which around here is not optional. This little parish seat of about 1,700 people carries a strange amount of cultural weight. John James Audubon lived at Oakley House just outside town in 1821, tutoring a planter's daughter and painting 32 of his birds of America in these woods, and the plantation is now a state historic site where the trails he walks still run through the same birdsong. The town's calendar leans literary and social in equal measure. The Walker Percy weekend every June turns the whole district into a front porch festival of author panels, bourbon tastings, and crawfish boils in honor of the novelist. Tickets sell out months ahead, and Christmas in the country in December fills the streets with lights, carolers, and home tours. Gardens are the local religion. The camellias and azaleas at Rosedown and Afton Villa draw pilgrims every spring, and garden club membership here functions as a fast pass into town society. The Yellowleaf Arts Festival each fall fills the streets with makers, and Cat Island Refuge just below the bluff holds some of the oldest bald cypress trees on the continent, a birder's standing appointment. Zillow has a typical home at $389,000, up 2.1% this year, and West Feliciana Parish Hospital operates right in town for the everyday, with Baton Rouge's full medical centers 35 minutes south. The honest paragraph: Louisiana summers are a commitment. Hurricane season is real, even this far inland, and the town's small size means the social circle is one circle. You'll know everyone, and everyone will know you. Some people just shivered at that sentence. The rest of you are already checking flights, and this bluff was built for you. America's first major gold rush didn't happen in California. It happened here in the North Georgia mountains in 1829, 2 decades before anyone yelled about Sutter's Mill, and Dahlonega still wears it. A federal mint once stamped coins a block off the square. The courthouse in the middle of town is now a gold museum, and you can still pan a creek with your grandkids on a Saturday morning. But the reason this town makes a loneliness list is what happens on that square today. Every third weekend of April, Bear on the Square Mountain Festival fills downtown with old-time and bluegrass music. And not just on stages. The whole point is the open jamming, pickers circled up under tents and on corners, instrument cases open, strangers waved in. And that jam culture doesn't pack up with the festival. It runs through the year in the shops and porches around the square. Add the University of North Georgia, 7 minutes of walk from downtown, keeping lectures, concerts, and ball games on the calendar. Add the wine surprise. Half a dozen wineries in the surrounding hills have quietly made Dahlonega Georgia's wine country, tasting rooms right on the square. And add the trail. The approach path to the Appalachian Trail's southern terminus starts nearby at Amicalola Falls, which keeps a steady current of hikers and hiking clubs moving through town. December turns the square into a small phenomenon. The old-fashioned Christmas lights draw crowds from across the state, and a Hallmark movie filmed here made the postcard official. Zillow has a typical home at $387,000, up slightly this year, mountain views included at the right elevation. Northeast Georgia Medical Center operates a hospital campus right in Lumpkin County, with the system's big Gainesville flagship 40 minutes down the road. The honest lines, summer weekends bring Atlanta day trippers by the thousands. Parking near the square becomes a sport, and mountain roads plus the occasional ice storm are part of the deal. What's left after the tourists drive home is a gold town that never stopped gathering, banjos included. Twice a year, this town of 7,000 fills with uniforms and marching bands, because Lexington, Virginia contains not one college but two, Washington and Lee University and the Virginia Military Institute, sitting shoulder to shoulder on adjoining hills, and their combined calendar runs this town's social life like a metronome. VMI's full-dress parades on the barracks parade ground are free and open to anyone. Retirees line the wall with coffee like it's the best show in the valley, because it is. And Washington and Lee's lecture series, concerts, and gallery openings hand residents a university cultural life with no tuition attached. The town between the campuses holds up its end, a brick and columned downtown of bookshops and cafes where the Lime Kiln Theater stages summer concerts in the ruins of an old limestone quarry under the stars, one of the more magical music venues in the South. And the community runs deep on volunteer institutions, historical societies, garden week tours, and the kind of lecture-attending crowd that fills rooms on a Tuesday. Horses matter here too. The Virginia Horse Center just north of town hosts shows nearly year-round, another standing calendar. History buffs get their own membership track. Both college campuses hold museums, and the Rockbridge Historical Society keeps a lecture and walking tour schedule that treats the 1700s like current events. Zillow has the typical Lexington home at $373,000, up 4.2% this year. And Carillion Rockbridge Community Hospital operates right in town with the system's big Roanoke flagship 50 minutes south. The Blue Ridge frames everything. The Maury River runs through for kayaks and swimming holes, and the Chessie Nature Trail follows it for 7 flat, car-free miles. The honest ledger, this is a town that empties a little when the students leave in May. The pace drops to a hum, and nightlife means a concert or a porch. For the retiree this list is built for, that sentence reads less like a warning and more like the brochure. On September 7, 1876, the Jesse James Gang rode into Northfield, Minnesota to rob the First National Bank, and the town famously shot them to pieces in 7 minutes, townspeople grabbing rifles from hardware store shelves. 150 years later, Northfield still throws itself a party about it. The defeat of Jesse James Days every September. 5 days of bank raid reenactments, rodeo, parades, and 250,000 visitors, run almost entirely by local volunteers, which tells you what kind of town survived that raid. The deeper engine here is the two-college problem. In the best sense, Carleton College and St. Olaf College face each other across this river town of 20,000, two nationally ranked campuses in one zip code, and their public calendars stack concerts, lectures, art exhibitions, and recitals so thick that the town's unofficial motto is cows, colleges, and contentment. St. Olaf's Christmas Festival alone, broadcast nationally for decades, turns early December into a pilgrimage, and both schools run lifelong learning programs that retirees enroll in by the hundreds. The Grand Event Center downtown books music into a restored 1910s ballroom, and Riverwalk Market Fair fills the riverbank with art and produce on summer Saturdays. The Cannon River cuts through a downtown of 1870s brick, with a riverwalk, an arts guild, and a contented buzz that never quite goes quiet even in January. Zillow has the typical home at $399,000, up 2.7% this year, the second priciest address on this countdown. And Northfield Hospital, city-owned and modern, sits right in town with the Twin Cities medical giants 45 minutes north. The honest entry, Minnesota winter is a serious months-long fact, and home prices here carry a two-college premium. In exchange, you get a town where the 1870s bank is a museum, the colleges are your entertainment budget, and the citizens once literally refused to be robbed. Community in Northfield is armed with a calendar. There's a museum in this northeast Iowa town that the entire nation of Norway helps maintain, Vesterheim, the National Norwegian-American Museum, the largest museum in the country devoted to a single immigrant group. 16 buildings of ships, folk art, and pioneer cabins in the middle of a town of 7,700. And Vesterheim isn't a display case, it's a school. Its folk art school runs hands-on classes year-round. Rosemulling painting, wood carving, knife making, weaving, taught to waiting lists of mostly gray-haired students, which makes it this list's purest connection machine. You sign up alone and graduate with a table of friends. Every July since 1967, Nordic Fest takes over downtown. 3 days of parades, folk dancing, left-sea griddles, and troll-themed everything, staffed by what feels like the entire town. Luther College sits on the hill adding its concert and lecture calendar, and the landscape argues nobody should stay indoors anyway. Decorah sits in the driftless region's trout country, spring-fed streams threading limestone bluffs, with Dunning Spring waterfall practically downtown, and the famous Decorah Eagle Cam nest that made this town a household name for bird lovers. Trout Run Trail loops 11 paved miles around town, past the fish hatchery and under the eagle tree, and the Co-op Grocery downtown doubles as the unofficial morning forum. Zillow has the typical home at $278,000, up 1.7% this year. And the hospital line is quietly elite. WinMed operates right in town in affiliation with Mayo Clinic Health System, Rochester itself barely an hour north, which is medical geography most small towns would trade their courthouse for. And a quick left-sea flip before the top 8. If a town with a folk art school and a Mayo connection is useful to you, hit subscribe. It costs you nothing. And unlike a Rosemelon class, there's no waiting list. The honest note, Iowa winter, real and long. The Norwegians never minded. The Saturday before tulip time, the people of Pella wash their streets. Not city crews, the people, in Dutch costume with buckets and brooms, ceremonially scrubbing the bricks the way their ancestors did in Holland. And then 80,000 visitors arrive for 3 days of parades, wooden shoe dancing, and a town of 10,000 operating as a single coordinated performance. That festival has run since 1935, and it explains Pella better than any statistic. This is a town founded by 800 Dutch refugees in 1847 that decided assimilation was optional. The Vermeer windmill turns over downtown, the tallest working Dutch windmill in North America, grinding actual flour. The Mollengrat Plaza wraps a small canal with a drawbridge, and the two rival Dutch bakeries, Jarsma and Vanderploeg, have been politely feuding over whose almond pastry letters are superior for a century, a debate you will be recruited into at the counter. The connection engines stack. Tulip Time needs hundreds of volunteers annually. Central College keeps a concert and lecture calendar downtown. The 1900 Pella Opera House runs shows under its restored tin ceiling, and Lake Red Rock, Iowa's largest lake, spreads out 10 minutes south with eagle watching all winter. The Cloak and Spell Carillon above the square performs with mechanical Dutch figures 4 times a day, and Thursday summer evenings bring free concerts to the Mollengrat Canal Plaza. Zillow has the typical Pella home at $315,000, up 5.1% this year, and the healthcare answer is unusually strong for the size. Pella Regional Health Center is a full hospital right in town. The honest lines, Iowa winter is Iowa winter, and during tulip time, your quiet brick street becomes a parade route. Some residents rent their lawns and lean in. There's one more Dutch inheritance worth naming. The sunken gardens at Schulte Church and the tulip beds a city plants by the tens of thousands mean spring here arrives on schedule and in formation, a civic performance that costs residents nothing but a walk. The rest of the year you live in a town that rehearses togetherness annually, in costume with pastry as the prize. There are no straight streets in Eureka Springs, not one. The entire town is bolted onto Ozark hillsides and Victorian switchbacks, staircases count as thoroughfares, no two houses seem to share an elevation, and the whole downtown, every gingerbread inch of it, sits on the National Register of Historic Places. The town boomed in the 1880s around 63 healing springs, built grand hotels and bathhouses, and when the healing water fad faded, artists moved into the cheap Victorian bones and never left. Today, this town of about 2,000 runs on one of the densest gallery scenes in mid-America, and May is a full month-long festival of the arts, studio tours, gallery strolls, art in the parks. Music holds the calendar's other half. Basin Spring Park downtown hosts free live music on weekends through the warm months. The 1929 City Auditorium books touring acts into a hall built in the flush years. And Opera in the Ozarks stages full productions just outside town every summer. Even the town's most famous hotel works as a social engine. The 1886 Crescent on the hilltop leans into its most haunted hotel in America reputation, with nightly ghost tours that half the town seems to guide. May's studio tour caps a calendar that also squeezes in a folk festival, a jazz weekend, and antique car parades. And the trolley system means none of it requires parking on a switchback. Zillow has the typical home at $315,000, up 0.5% this year, though the Victorians on the historic loop run higher. The Honest Ledger, Eureka Springs Hospital in town, is a small critical access facility, fine for the everyday, with the fuller hospitals 30 to 45 minutes out in Berryville and Harrison. And those switchback streets that enchant visitors are a genuine consideration for knees and winters. What you get is a town where eccentricity is the civic religion. The parking problem is solved by a trolley and a good pair of shoes. Every staircase has a nickname, and nobody has ever once been anonymous on one. Hendersonville's Main Street curves. That sounds minor until you walk it. The street was deliberately serpentined and planted decades ago, flower beds and trees threading between the storefronts of this blue-rich town. And the result keeps winning Best Main Street list because it functions like an outdoor living room. Benches occupied, sidewalk tables full, bear statues painted by local artists standing guard. This is North Carolina's apple capital. The orchards climb the hills east of town, and every Labor Day weekend since 1947, the North Carolina Apple Festival takes over downtown for 4 days. Street fair, orchard tours, and a King Apple Parade. While all autumn, the U-Pick orchards turn weekend mornings into a regional ritual. Culture runs deeper than a town of 15,000 suggests. The Flat Rock Playhouse, the State Theater of North Carolina, stages professional productions 10 minutes south, right next to Connemara, the farm where Carl Sandburg spent his last 22 years, now a National Historic Site where the descendants of his wife's champion goats still graze. The newest engine is the Escusta Trail, a rail trail rolling out of Hendersonville toward Brevard, its first miles now open and filling with morning walkers and bike clubs. Rhythm and Brews concerts fill downtown on summer evenings, and the county's apple stands run a September ritual of Sire donuts that locals plan their errands around. Zillow has the typical home at $393,000, up 4.4%, and going pending in about a week, the fastest market on this countdown. Healthcare is the quiet flex, 2 full hospitals inside one small city, Advent Health Hendersonville and UNC Health Party. The Honest notes, the Asheville region's popularity has priced these hills up. Leaf season clogs the roads, and the 2024 floods that hit western North Carolina left memories here even where damage was lighter. Still, 7-day pending times say the verdict is in. The mountains got a main street that curves, and everybody wants a bench on it. For one June weekend, the front lawns of Danville, Kentucky fill with picnic blankets, lawn chairs, and the sounds of sousaphones because this town of 17,000 hosts the Great American Brass Band Festival, free to everyone, running since 1990. Brass ensembles from across the country playing under the trees while the whole town eats fried chicken on quilts. It's the most Danville thing imaginable, and the competition for that title is stiff. Centre College sits in the middle of town, and its Norton Center for the Arts books the kind of touring acts, symphonies, Broadway tours, headline performers that 1,500-seat halls in cities 20 times this size would envy, and residents fill it year-round. History pulls its weight. Constitution Square downtown preserves the spot where Kentucky statehood was argued into existence, and in 1809, a Danville doctor named Ephraim McDowell performed the world's first successful abdominal surgery a few blocks away. The operation that founded a branch of medicine, and the town never forgot. His house is a museum, and his name is on the hospital. Which brings up the practical spine. Ephraim McDowell Regional Medical Center is a genuine regional hospital right in town, serving several counties. The Community Arts Center fills a former post office with classes and galleries, and Danville's pedestrian-friendly downtown recently earned it a Great American Main Street Award, the civic equivalent of a gold record. Zillow has the typical Danville home at $222,000, up 8% over the past year, the second cheapest and among the hottest addresses on this countdown, in the rolling green edge of bourbon country with the Wilderness Trail Distillery in town and Perryville Battlefield 15 minutes out. Quick intermission from the brass section. If a $222,000 college town with its own festival is useful information, hit subscribe. It costs nothing, and unlike the tuba, it requires no lung capacity. The honest note is a Kentucky summer, humid and unhurried. The town's answer is a shaded lawn and a band. The oldest bourbon bar in the world still pours in Bardstown, the Old Talbot Tavern, serving travelers on the same corner since 1779. Stone walls, bullet holes attributed to Jesse James, and a bar where out-of-towners and locals end up in the same conversation by the second round, which is roughly the entire social model of this town. Bardstown calls itself the bourbon capital of the world and backs it up. Heaven Hill, Barton, Willett, Lux Row, and a wave of newer distilleries ring the town, their tasting rooms and visitor centers functioning as a rotating open house. And every September, the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, running since 1992, fills the courthouse lawn with tastings, live music, and the kind of crowd where a name tag would be redundant by Saturday. The other engine is older and stranger. At my old Kentucky home state park on the edge of town, the Stephen Foster Story has been staged outdoors every summer since 1959, a full costume musical under the stars, cast and crewed with heavy local participation, one of the longest-running outdoor dramas in the country, and the park's golf course wraps the mansion for the morning after. Rand McNally and USA Today once crowned this the most beautiful small town in America, and the brick and columned historic district makes the case daily. The old Bardstown Village and Civil War Museum add a history circuit downtown, and a dinner train runs excursions through the knobs on a 1940s rail line, white tablecloths included. Zillow has the typical home at $255,000, up 3.9% this year, 40 minutes from Louisville's airport and big hospitals, with Flagget Memorial Hospital right in town for the everyday. The honest poor, tourism is the town's pulse. Bourbon Trail traffic owns summer weekends, and if whiskey culture isn't your culture, the calendar thins. For everyone else, this is a town whose primary industry is literally hospitality. Age is an oak. Every town on this list stumbled into community. Fairhope is the one that designed it on purpose. In 1894, a group of idealists from Iowa sailed to a bluff on Mobile Bay to build a utopian colony on cooperative land principles. They named it for their fair hope of success, and 130 years later, their experiment is the most deliberately beautiful small town in the South. Flowers planted by the city in every season, a downtown of galleries and the beloved Page and Palette bookstore, and a municipal pier stretching a quarter-mile into the bay where every single evening, a crowd gathers on benches and rails to watch the sun drop into the water, strangers narrating the sky to each other, the closest thing America has to a nightly town meeting. The founders drew writers and dreamers from the start, and the line never broke. Fannie Flagg, Winston Groom, and Rick Bragg all wrote here. The arts calendar runs deep with the Grand Festival of Art in March dating to the 1950s, and the first Friday Art Walk fills downtown monthly with music and open galleries. The Eastern Shore Arts Center runs classes and exhibitions that keep the founders' creative bloodline visibly alive. Mobile Bay adds its own miracle, the Jubilee, a rare summer night phenomenon when flounder and crabs swarm the shallows, and the whole Eastern Shore wakes each other up with phone calls to wade out with nets, a community alarm system disguised as a fish story. Now the number, and it's the honest one. Zillow has a typical Fairhope home at $461,000, up 3.8%, the most expensive address on this countdown by a distance. This is the splurge pick, and Thomas Hospital operates right in town under Infirmary Health. Gulf humidity and hurricane awareness come with the bay. What the premium buys is the thesis of this whole video. Proof that togetherness can be architecture. The founders bet a colony on it. The pier fills every sunset to confirm. Friday night in Floyd, Virginia has a dress code of exactly none, and a tradition of exactly one at 6:30. The Floyd Country Store, a 1910 general store with the shelves still stocked, opens its Friday night jamboree the way it has for some 40 years. A gospel set first, then old-time string bands, and then the floorboards start drumming, because this crowd flat-foot dances. Farmers and professors and retirees and tourists from 3 continents. $10 at the door, kids under 6 free. Around 9, the music spills outside. Pickers circle up on the sidewalks and parking lots, and the town of about 400 souls briefly triples. Here's what the visitors don't always realize. The store runs music 5 days a week. Tuesday tunes, honky-tonk Thursdays, Americana Saturday afternoons, and free Sunday jams where anyone with an instrument, any skill level, is waved into the circle, which for a retiree with a dusty guitar case is not entertainment, it's an open enrollment. Floyd sits a band off the Blue Ridge Parkway on Virginia's Crooked Road Heritage Music Trail, one stoplight in the entire county. Farms and ridgelines in every direction, with Floyd Fest pulling national acts to the mountainside each summer and an artisan trail of studios threading the hollows. The store also runs to handmade music school, teaching banjo, fiddle, and flatfoot dance to beginners of every age, so the dusty guitar case in your closet has a syllabus waiting. Zillow has the typical home at $309,000, up 12.6% over the past year, the hottest gain on this entire countdown. The secret is plainly out. The honest ledger carries real weight here. There is no hospital in Floyd. The Carilion New River Valley campus sits about 35 minutes down the mountain, and that drive belongs in your planning, winters on the parkway included. What Floyd offers in exchange is the single most reliable Friday night in America. 40 years and counting. The banjo has never once canceled. Some towns have a music scene, Mountain View has a music condition. This Ozark County seat of under 3,000 people calls itself the folk music capital of the world. And the claim survives inspection because from spring through fall, almost Friday and Saturday nights, the courthouse square fills with pickers, fiddles, banjos, mandolins, dulcimers. Circled up on the stage and the lawn and the corners of Picken Park behind the square, locals and visitors dragging camp chairs into the grass. And the price of admission is showing up. When winter pushes the circles indoors, Club Possum takes the handoff. A free music show every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night at the Mountain View Meeting Place, which means this tiny town offers live acoustic music 4 or 5 nights a week, year-round, for approximately nothing. None of it is an accident. Mountain View spent a century isolated in the hills. Its first paved roads didn't arrive until the 1960s, and that isolation pickled the old ballads and fiddle tunes that faded everywhere else, until a songwriter named Jimmy Driftwood, the man behind the Battle of New Orleans, helped organize the locals into the Rack-and-Sack Folklore Society and threw the first Arkansas Folk Festival in 1963. 2,500 visitors descended on a town of under 1,000, and the town understood what it had. The Ozark Folk Center State Park opened in 1973 on the edge of town, the only state park in America dedicated to preserving a region's music and culture. A 1,000-seat theater, 20-plus working artisans, and this April the Folk Festival ran for the 64th consecutive year. Now run the retiree math on top of the music. Zillow has the typical home at $214,000, up 5.4% this year, the second cheapest address on this countdown. Stone County Medical Center, part of the White River Health System, operates right in town. Blanchard Springs Caverns, one of the finest show caves in the country, sits 12 minutes northwest in the National Forest, and the White River's world-class trout water runs 15 minutes west. Look back down this list and Mountain View is quietly the whole thesis compressed. Floyd's Jamboree is one glorious night a week. This is the town-wide version. The Cora teaches folk art in classrooms. Here, the classroom is a sidewalk. Pella rehearses togetherness once a year in costume, Mountain View rehearses it every weekend in flannel. The honest closing notes? This is genuinely remote. Little Rock and its airport are about 2 hours, summers are humid Ozark summers, and a town this size means one grocery run covers your social calendar whether you planned it or not. But if the question this video started with was, who will actually know your name there? Mountain View answers it with a fiddle tune. Bring a chair, you're welcome. Bring an instrument, your family. Nobody retires lonely on a square that plays music. 20 towns and one design principle hiding under all of them. Loneliness is structural, and so is its opposite. Every town on this list runs an engine, a square that plays music, a festival the whole population staffs, a college that hands you a calendar, a folk school with a waiting list, a pier that fills at sunset. And an engine means you don't have to manufacture belonging from scratch, you just have to show up where it's already running. Now, the straight talk you've earned. No town does the work for you entirely. The first hello is still yours to say. An off-season visit will tell you more than any festival weekend. And prices, taxes, and conditions change monthly, so verify everything current before you move a single box. And tell me in the comments which engine actually fits you. The music square, the festival committee, the college lecture hall, or the sunset pier on the bay? Because your answers genuinely steer what I research next. If these 40 minutes were worth your evening, subscribe. Every number gets pulled fresh the week it airs. See you in the